Hello. When we last left off, we were talking about employment law, a really important subject. This lecture, we're going to be talking about agency. Now, agency is another kind of relationship involving two parties. You have a principal and you have an agent. The principal is giving the agent the authority to act on the principal's behalf. Usually it involves negotiating contracts and signing contracts on their behalf. There are lots of examples of agents, sports agents, for instance, negotiate contracts with teams on their clients' behalf. Real estate agents, real estate brokers, find buyers on their clients' behalf. So there are lots of examples of agents. Now, what's the agent? The agent is a fiduciary of the principal. What does that mean? That means that the agent must always act in the best interest of the principal. So an agency relationship, you have two parties. Now, just because you're an employee does not mean you are an agent. I want to stress that. Just because you're employed by someone does not mean that you have the right to act on your employer's behalf. As an employee, you're hired to provide services to the employer, not necessarily act on their behalf. You're not an agent. Okay? So briefly, who can be a principal? Well, the principal is the one giving the power to the agent. You cannot give what you do not have. So basically, in order to be a principal, you have to be competent. In other words, a court has not adjudged you to be incompetent. And ideally, you should be of the age of majority to make things easy. Now, what about an agent? Who can be an agent? Well, basically anyone. Anyone can be an agent, but obviously it wouldn't be very wise to have an agent who's incompetent or particularly young. All right. Now, the extent of an agent's authority depends upon what type of authority the principal has given the agent. There are two types of authority. You have actual authority and you have apparent authority. Now, actual authority, there are two types. You have express authority and implied authority. Express authority is just that. It's expressed in words. It can be written or spoken, but the authority is expressed in words. Implied authority is kind of like the authority to carry out the details of express authority. To, kind of the things that weren't particularly covered in express authority, but should be. So what would be a good example demonstrating, a good case demonstrating express and implied authority? Well, there was an interesting case from the 70s where a salesman from New York was told by his employer, a jeweler, the salesman was a jewelry salesman. He was told by his employer, I want you to attend a trade show in Los Angeles. And here, take this suitcase full of jewelry samples. Now, in the 70s, this suitcase was valued at $250,000, $500,000, something like that. A lot of money, even by today's standards. But back then, now today that would be worth millions. And so what kind of authority did his employer give the employee, the salesman? He gave him the express authority to go to Los Angeles with this, with the samples. But what about implied authority? Well, the salesman decided he would fly to Los Angeles. So he booked himself a flight, got his ticket, and he decided he didn't want to carry the $250,000 worth of jewelry on the plane. He would rather check it in. So he did. He checked it in. And as part of the check-in, he had to sign a contract, a waiver, if you will, while he was checking it in, limiting the airline's liability to $500 should anything happen to the goods that were checked in. Well, what do you think happened when he landed in LA? Lo and behold, the sample suitcase was gone. $250,000 worth of jewelry gone. His employer was not happy. He made a claim with the airlines. The airline said, sure, no problem. Here's a check for $500. Now, obviously, his employer wasn't happy with that. He sued the airlines, seeking to collect the true value of all those jewels. Well, the court issued an interesting opinion that really demonstrates express and implied authority. The salesman certainly had express authority to go to the trade show. And he had the implied authority. He had the implied authority to fly there and also to check in the sample. So you can see how express and implied authority were working kind of hand in hand in that case. So the court said, no, in order to accomplish the express authority, there's got to be, there's other things that need to be done. You have to have implied authority. You want to come here? Now all of a sudden my son is camera shy. Oh, there he is. All right. This is my son. Okay. All right, go. All right, go. Okay. He's been dying to do that all semester long. But anyway, express authority. That's like the big picture authority. Go to Los Angeles. The implied authority, you gotta get there. Take a plane. When you take a plane, you have luggage. You have express authority to check in that luggage, or implied authority to check in that luggage. Thus, when that salesman signed that waiver, that contract, limiting the airline's liability to $500, that was fine. That was fine. So that's actual authority. It could be either express or implied. Now, the other type of authority is apparent authority. Now, apparent authority, that's where a reasonable person looking at someone, looking at an agent, would assume that you had the authority to act. So, for instance, suppose you were working for me, and I was working somewhere in the Diamond District in New York, and I told you, I want you to go downtown and negotiate a contract. I don't want you to execute it. I don't want you to sign it. I just want you to go down there and negotiate a contract. You go downtown, you meet the parties, and you're negotiating the contract. Now, the other parties there, those third parties, looking at you negotiate the contract, would it be unreasonable on their behalf to believe that you have the authority to also sign the contract? Probably not. Probably not. So that is apparent authority. It's where the principal has placed the agent in such a position that a reasonable person would believe they have authority to act. So in either case, whether it's actual authority or apparent authority, the actions of the agent, usually signing a contract, are binding on the principal. All right. Now, what type of duties does an agent owe the principal? Well, the first one is a duty of loyalty. After all, the agent is a fiduciary of the principal. That means that the agent has to act in the best interest of the principal at all times. The second duty is the duty not to exceed authority. If the principal gives you a certain amount of authority, you cannot go past it. If you do, potentially, and the principal sustains damages, you could potentially be liable for those damage. Third, and closely related to the duty not to exceed authority, is the duty to obey instructions. Certainly, a principal going out there has to, follow whatever instructions the principal has given him or her. The fourth duty is a duty to exercise skill and care. In other words, to do due diligence in the performance of their actions, of their duties as an agent. The fifth is the duty to account for funds collected. The duty to account for funds collected. Oftentimes, agents collect money on behalf of the principal. that money has to be accounted for to the principal. And finally, 6, a duty to give notice of material events. So when I do send you downtown to negotiate a contract, during the course of negotiations, if there are any big breakthroughs, you gotta let me know. I'm the principal, you have to let me know. All right, what about the duties of a principal? Well, I have a little bit of a problem with the book. One, they say, is the duty to compensate the agent. Well, maybe in some states, but in New York, that's not necessary. That's not necessary. Compensation is not a duty for a principal in New York. Now, it may be agreed upon. Compensation might be agreed upon, but that's a contract, not in and of itself simply an agency relationship. So simply by virtue of the fact that there's an agency relationship does not mean, at least in New York, that the principal has a duty to compensate the agent. But still, a duty to compensate the agent when agreed upon. 2, a duty to reimburse the agent or to indemnify them. If the agent has spent monies on the principal's behalf or has had to pay monies on the principal's behalf, the principal's got to pay him back. So a duty to reimburse or indemnify. All right. Now, a couple of other things that are important in terms of contractual liability. Now, when it comes to contracts, when we all know, well, by virtue of the fact that it's an agency relationship, as long as the agent has actual authority or apparent authority, they can sign a contract on the principal's behalf. But is there ever a time where the agent could potentially be liable for the contract that they have signed on the principal's behalf? Well, that depends on a couple of different factors. What do the third parties know? In other words, what type of agent is the agent? And there are 3 basic types of agents. The first one is a fully disclosed agent, a fully disclosed agency. What does that mean? That means that the third party that the agent is dealing with is aware of 1, that the person they're dealing with is an agent, and 2, they know the name of the principal. So when that third party is negotiating with that agent, whose creditworthiness are they really relying upon? Whose reputation are they really relying upon? Well, they're really relying upon the principal's creditworthiness, the principal's reputation. I mean, they know they're dealing with the agent, but they know that the person who's going to execute the contract is actually the principal. So they're relying upon the principal, the third party is. In those situations, the agent is not liable for the contract, unless they've gone beyond the scope of their authority or they're not following instructions. But basically, as long as the agent is within their authority and following or obeying instructions, the agent is not liable for the contract. All right, the second type of agency or agent is a partially disclosed agency. So what does the third party know there? Well, the third party there knows, 1, they're dealing with an agent, but 2, they do not know the name of the principal. In that situation, whose creditworthiness, whose reputation is the third party relying upon? Well, clearly they're relying upon the agent's creditworthiness and reputation. They don't know who the principal is. In those situations, the agent can be liable for the contract, should the principal breach the contract. Okay. Finally, third, there's an undisclosed agency. An undisclosed agency is where the third party doesn't even know that they're dealing with an agent, much less the name of the principal. So obviously, whose creditworthiness, whose reputation is the third party relying upon? Well, the principals. I'm sorry, the agents, clearly. The agent's creditworthiness, the agent's reputation. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit tired. It's late in the day. But they're relying upon the agent's reputation. In that situation, again, the agent can be liable for the contract. All right. I just want to talk about independent contractors a little bit. Now, the principal-agent relationship is marked by a high degree of control, the principal over the agent. Um, there's a different type of relationship, a principal-independent contractor relationship. Now, with independent contractors, what defines the relationship is a lack of control of the principal over the independent contractor. The principal does not control the means or the methods by which the independent contractor gets the work done. So for example, a good example of that would be tradespeople. You buy a house, you want to redo your bathroom. You bring in an independent contractor, and you tell them what you want, what you want the bathroom to look like. But in terms of controlling the work, what tools the independent contractor uses, what method the independent contractor uses, the principal has no say over it. They just want the end result. So why have an independent contractor relationship? Well, a principal is potentially liable for the contract signed by an agent, or they are liable for the contract signed by an agent. And by the way, a principal can be liable for the torts of an agent as well. But with an independent contractor, the principal, generally speaking, is not liable for the contract signed by an independent contractor, nor are they, generally speaking, liable for the torts of an independent contractor. So that's the advantage in some respects over of an independent contractor relationship over an agency relationship. With an independent contractor relationship, the principal is not liable for the contracts or torts of the independent contractor, generally speaking. All right, that's it for this subject. We are going to have an exam, and I sent you a study guide, so please take a look at that. And should you have any questions, please email me. Okay, good luck.